Hi, welcome to Girlfriends of a Certain Age, a podcast for women in midlife. We are busy living our best lives. I'm your co host, Flesche Hesh. I'm a business coach and work life balance expert for women.
And I'm your co host, Jessica Neighbor. I'm a voice coach for vocalists and public speakers online at Impact Vocal Coaching. We are girlfriends in real life, and in every episode, we'll discuss a different hot topic about becoming wise women, recovering from being a good girl, and not giving a bleep anymore.
If you identify as a girlfriend of any age and you want to join our conversation, join us on Instagram, YouTube, and girlfriendsofacertainage.com. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Girlfriends of a Certain Age. I'm Flesche.
I'm Jessica.
How are you today, Jessica?
I'm good, my friend. How are you doing?
I'm good. The weather is changing here, so I'm all cozy up in my sweater, and I don't know. I had a really good weekend. I'm so excited to be here and dive into this topic today of busting some myths.
Oh my gosh. Yes, Mythbusters. Let's go. I'm excited for it too because there's just
Yeah.
so many out there that I think we maybe believe, and I think especially our young women listeners might fear. So I'm really happy to break it down for girlfriends of many ages today.
Absolutely. So Jessica and I got together and we put together 9 myths that popped into our heads. So between the two of us, so we'll be very curious to hear from you, our listener, what numbers 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and so on are, because this is a big conversation. And it's a big reason why Jessica and I started this podcast. When we started looking up information and mentors and books and podcasts about this thing we call midlife or menopause or just becoming a grown up woman, it wasn't pretty. And so today we thought we would just kick 9 myths in the teeth, straight in the teeth, and say, huh, really? So let's get right into it.
Woo!
And the first one is that we, as we age, don't like sex anymore.
Hmm.
And I'm really curious to know where this came from. I mean, I know that a lot of people talk about certainly about comfort, or lack of comfort,
Mhm.
as we age and needing more lubrication and things like that.
Mhm.
And so I don't know where the myth comes from, or even what the stats are on how many women are not having sex anymore at a certain point, or what the personal reasons are why. Um, how does that land for you, Jessica?
Yeah, I wish I could find the quote for the stats because I was looking this up for our episode a little bit, and the majority of women still enjoy sex well into their 80s. So that
Mm-hmm.
is a complete myth. And I think you are right to say that, yeah, there can be a little discomfort, but there's so many options for that. Lube, like you said, local hormone cream, all kinds of options. And you and your partner just like get to kind of grow together and figure out what's going to work for you. And that's true, I think, anyways, as we age with either one partner or many, however you want to rock it. I also had a question about this sex one. I love that we're just like diving into the juicy one first. Is And that question is, why are young women and frankly girls so hypersexualized? And then why are grown ass women, considered non sexual?
Mm,
What
right.
is that about? Because girls, as they develop, are just automatically seen as these sexual beings. It's almost like I think our culture feels like, oh, they peak by their 20s. And I'm over here like, yeah, no, right? There's like lots of stats out there about women orgasms and how we just like get better with them. Some of us, frankly, learn to finally have them.
Right.
So that is a real disconnect in our culture for certain.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I remember being told by a male relative when I was like 13, 14, that I would be the prettiest I would ever be when I was 21.
Ah,
And I was just like,
Wow.
you're not supposed to say that. And that's not true. Of course, I didn't say any of that at the time because I didn't have that inner strength, right?
Yeah.
And here I was being sexualized by this male relative, being a total creep. Uh,
Creepazoid.
yeah. And so, uh, I think that, yeah, there's something about a young woman coming into, going through puberty,
Yeah.
becoming this fresh, new thing that a man can like somehow take
And manipulate.
and manipulate and imprint on. That's the other thing I
Yes.
see. It's like, I want to imprint on you so that you will be my ideal partner.
And to be fair, I don't think most men think that way, right? I
No, I don't
don't.
think most men think that way, but I do think that's part of what porn
Mm-hmm.
tends to sort of
Mm-hmm.
highlight and bring out sort of this shadow, right? And the shadow is there, but most people aren't working with their shadow, so it can not always serve them well or serve us well. As you know, when I was a young woman, I definitely feel like I had a lot of creepy energy around me.
Yeah.
Um, and luckily, I had good parents who were very attentive and kept me safe. But that it happens so much. And then there are so many women that I meet in midlife who are maybe looking for a partner and they feel so passed over, whether
Yeah.
it's sexually or for actual for partnership, for long-term partnership. Um, and I was just thinking, and I was telling you about this earlier, about I've
Yeah.
run into a couple of friends recently who've just kind of dropped it on me like that they're done with sex. People who
Mm.
are either my age or not even that old, much older than me. And they weren't close girlfriends like you and I have this
Mm-hmm.
dynamic. So I wasn't going to get into it with them. Like, well, tell me more about this. But I do think that's one of the things that we can do with this podcast is just allow people to sort of ruminate on this topic and what is it for them, and we can all make peace with where we're at, and no
Yes.
judgment, of course.
Right.
But I love that the research shows that we keep on love and sex for a good long time.
We do.
And I also just feel the need to remind all of us how important it is to have a doctor that we feel comfortable with to say what the symptoms are that we might be experiencing, because there is so much help and so many different kinds of healthcare providers,
Mm-hmm.
holistic and Western medicine. And I just think that there's so much available to us that for us to suffer silently just really breaks my heart. Well, so all this to say that this idea, this myth that we as women of a certain age or girlfriends of a certain age don't want sex anymore is a huge topic. There are so many reasons. They're cultural, they're even political, medical, emotional, psychological. It's very vast. You and I are going to have to do a lot more episodes on this topic,
Oh yeah.
and I'm very excited for it. And I want to hear from our listener. What did we leave off? Where you were like, well, I thought you were going to go here, you didn't go there. Leave us a comment, let us know, because we're going to keep talking about this. This is not going anywhere because this is a huge myth that needs busting for
Mm-hmm.
everybody in the culture.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to go to number two, which is that middle age and older people are just no fun anymore. We don't know how to have fun. Yeah, we're done with that.
Oh my gosh. I think for a long, long time, I don't know. I mean, I guess it started when I was about 30, where I realized, oh, I'm really a grown up now. So I started
Mm,
wearing pigtails. Um, for me, it's been a very concerted effort. I don't want to be a boring grown up. I've
mm,
always had this idea that I was not going to be like that. And people give me the feedback too. Like, there's something very youthful about you. And I'm like, well,
mhm,
thank you. And for me, one of my personal practices is inner child work. And so
mm.
right lately for me, it's been my inner 8-year old, and she is just all about unicorns and rainbows, and she has very particular things she wants to eat and do and see and experience. And I feel like when I bring all of myself, which includes my inner 8-year old, I'm not too serious as a grown up. I mean, I still obviously run my business and I'm a parent and I'm a partner and I'm a friend and I get a lot accomplished in my life, but I do it with a smile on my face and with a lot of fun. And I do feel a youthful energy. And the people who I know, like my elder ladies in my life, the ones I'm most drawn to are like that too.
Hmm. Yes,
Mhm.
I completely agree. It makes me think of this deal that I made with Finn, my older son, which was if we're ever swimming and I come up with some lame excuse like I don't want to get my hair wet, and not swim, that he can bust me and push me into the pool or the lake or the ocean. He was saying, "Why did adults not swim?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And maybe we don't feel like swimming, but I think a lot of us maybe don't feel like getting in our suit and it feels like effort. And I remember having that same feeling as a kid, like, what is wrong with you people? Why is everyone not in the pool? So that was a pact I made. And I love the idea of just keeping in touch with your youthfulness. And I think for me, it's specifically keeping in touch with the creative part of me, because that's going to keep us youthful and staying curious, wanting to learn more, wanting to learn about people, wanting to try on some new skills. That to me is just so fun. Uh, and fun can evolve. I don't know if I have to be out at the club every weekend like you and I used to love to do and get
Oh,
our dance on. I might be dancing in the kitchen instead, but that we stay in tune with whatever that thing is that gives us that zing. That's what I feel like is really fun.
right. I guess it's tricky to call it a youthful energy, but really it's life force. And
Ah,
that's
good
something
point.
that's so apparent in children, and we allow them that. And so my kids are 11 and 7 as we record this. And so I do have this literal youthful energy in my life, these rambunctious boys of mine. So I really, what I want to say is that it's more of a life force, and I see that in them. It's so we have so much permission to do it, and of course,
Yeah.
I keep encouraging it, and it keeps that alive in me too. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, they're just going to get older and older and older and more mature, and but I want them to keep that life force in them as well. That's something I really want to cultivate for everybody in my life, and I think
Absolutely.
most of the people who choose me to keep me in their lives, that's part of what I bring them.
Okay.
So the next myth is that we lose our femininity.
Mm.
Womp womp, right?
And feminine is different than being sexualized. And so I think we get more comfortable with that. I feel more balanced with feeling truly feminine and recognizing that that doesn't always have to be a sexual thing,
Right.
right? That I can dress up and look and feel sexy one day, and then the next day I can absolutely wear something that's much more androgynous and still feel fabulous. That we have the freedom, we're not like beholden to this certain uniform that we feel compelled to wear for the
Mm,
gaze at large. I also think that how I dress I'm more aware of what works for my body. I'm not as caught up in the trends, and that very much connects to my femininity in terms of how I feel in my skin, how I feel in my body. I feel very, very comfortable, both in what I'm wearing and also just being who I am. And so to me, that's the definition of being really feminine for me.
mm. Yes, I something similar for me. I'm so much more comfortable with my femininity. I've owned it and claimed it in a whole new way.
Yeah.
But you and I are similar. We both live with all dudes. And so, but like the people in my house refer to me as the queen. My husband and my kids,
Mm,
they refer to me that way.
I
And
love
like
it.
there's something about the feminine energy that I get to exude and is so well received in my home.
Hmm.
And I'm just really I really feel like I'm so much more of who I am meant to be, what I'm really meant to be here for in a really beautiful and powerful way, and tapping into the magic that it is to be a woman. That it's an incredible, powerful, magical, yummy creature to be. I'm so grateful to be in this feminine body of mine. And
Yes.
I delight and rejoice in that more now than I
Yes.
think I ever have.
And I think not feeling trapped by a definition of what feminine or masculine even means just gives us so much more freedom, right? Like feeling forced to be feminine is a real burden for for women. I think feeling forced to be masculine is a huge burden for men. So I do see as we age a nice softening with both men and women about what that feels like and what defines them. And I think that's a really nice place to be with yourself. So I want to honor that too for our boyfriends of a certain age, that we can we can all get a little more balanced in that, because we I think we are still, when we're younger, really working out the archetype around that. All right, up next is another big myth that we need to bust, and that is called losing power as we age.
I think it's connected to so much of what we've already talked about,
Yeah.
right? That if we're not being seen as sexual beings, if we're not being seen as feminine, if we're not being seen as beautiful, if we're not being seen as valuable, if we're, past the time of making babies, what is your purpose then? What is your power? What are you here for? Are you just taking up space? And of
Mm-hmm.
course, the answer to all that is no. um, that there is a way we can reclaim or claim our power. And for so many girlfriends of a certain age, that's something they're still working toward,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know for me in my own recovery from being a good girl, I thought my power came from being good and being quiet and keeping the peace and, putting up with abuse. I thought that was a power. And maybe it
Yeah.
was at a certain time,
Mm.
but it not now.
Mm-mm.
Right. And so now, and this is something that you teach so beautifully, is how do we reclaim our voice
Mm-hmm.
to use that as a powerful instrument, as a tool to
Mm-hmm.
express ourselves, um, and just speaking truth and being unafraid when we see injustices against ourselves and against others. There's a real power, and being an
Yes.
ally for others.
Absolutely. And I agree so much, because I think when we start to feel a little less burdened by the social pressures, we also can see, this greater connected importance. I don't mean to say it's either or, by the way. I should be specific for my own journey, that there was a way I was just more wrapped up in maybe the start of my career, my young children, and now that I'm kind of coming into middle age, I feel like I'm coming up out of the water a little bit and looking around and going, "Oh, hey, what's going on here?" So there's a greater calling. So I find it actually really ironic that I'm feeling more powerful than ever, and yet there is this myth that we are like no longer important, because that is just total baloney. Uh, but I think it's absolutely connected to, your expiration date, if you're fertile, if you're beautiful, if all of these pressures. So really feeling into that deeper power that like you said, that can cause activism or grassroots organization. Women and middle-aged women are doing that, and older women are doing that all the time.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's something I look forward to when I'm not quite as busy with the active mothering, that where else can that energy go?
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Absolutely.
when we can lend our privilege to those who don't have as much privilege. And that's something I do now as much as I can or have the energy for, but it will be great when my kids are more launched and using the power that I do have, because I too feel more powerful now than ever, using it on behalf of those who could use a helping hand as well.
Absolutely. Well, our next myth is connected very much, because we wrote down becoming invisible.
Mm.
So, how is that different from losing our power, actually? I'm trying to think about that. Maybe
Well,
that the culture is so youth obsessed that we're like overlooked, not even seen or recognized. What do you think?
so I think there's something about the culture. It's look,
Mm-hmm.
oh, lady of a certain age. Next, I think that there is probably something to that. But I also think about how many disempowered women of a certain age are also walking around feeling disempowered, and that makes us invisible. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a
Yes,
little bit of both,
that's a good
honestly.
point.
I don't think it's any one thing. And then, we can choose to make ourselves invisible too. I mean, there is a
Mhm.
way that energetically we can hold ourselves back so that people aren't noticing us, or a way we can turn that dial up where it's like, hello, everybody, Flesche in the room.
You're right.
I think that I know it's something I'm very aware of. It's something I work with. It's something, I teach people to do because, how bright or dim the light is could be for safety or for
Mhm.
just like to conserve your energy, like at a
Mhm.
party.
I think
uh,
too that when we were younger, we had so much unwelcomed attention that there's been a
mm,
relief to not being noticed as frequently. Not to say that I turned every head on the block, but every young girl or young woman, I think, can relate to getting, unsolicited, cat calls and whatever it is, gross comments, things like that. Or just when you're not even in the mood, you don't want to be approached that way. So I have heard some women who are a bit older even than us say that there's something kind of fun about it because you don't have to worry about that pressure any longer. You can kind of go do what you want to do, and not worry as much. And that's a I think that's a kind of freedom actually.
hmm So with that freedom, though, I also hear choice, right? That,
Yes,
because we can choose that, and we can
that's right.
choose not that. But it is definitely a myth that I want to bust or kick straight in the teeth and do it on my own terms.
Yes,
I
there
think
you
that's a
go.
lot of what I'm personally feeling.
Yeah,
Like, have your story, but here's mine.
yeah, absolutely. And it's your choice.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by our dear friend and girlfriend of a certain age, relationship coach Tamara Mendelson. We wanted you to meet Tamara because she brings a really fresh perspective to relationships that we thought you needed to know about. You can learn more about Tamara at tamaramendelson.com.
Hi, Tamara Mendelson here, relationship coach. Relationships are hard, and I wrote the mini relationship roadmap to help you along the way in your own relationship. Tips and tricks and some exercises to help figure out if your relationship is broken or if you're just angry. So sign up for our email down below and get on our mailing list, and I'll send you out this workbook right away. Talk soon.
Today's episode is brought to you by the 5 Minute Work Life Balance Digital Workbook. Do you need help achieving work life balance? I will teach you how to take back your time and your life. You can forget about feeling guilty, overwhelmed, and out of balance. You will discover the 9 unexpected strategies to achieve work life balance. My name is Flesche Hesh, trained as a marriage and family therapist turned business coach and a work life balance expert for women of a certain age. I'm the mom of two. I'm a CEO, published author, and a podcaster. So today you can get access to the digital workbook, my online course, and me, your coach, for $29. This is available for a limited time, and the link is below.
In the matter.
Absolutely.
I love it.
Well, this next one, I wonder how much of it is choice, but I'd like to think that there's a fair amount of choice, and that is that we just turn into cranky, cranky ladies. Uh, I'm reminded. This was a couple of years ago, but I had pulled something in my back, and I
Mm.
was in pain, and so I was quite cranky. And it was
Mm.
the first time where I realized, oh gosh, I just think about all of these people I've met who are cranky, and I thought, I wonder if they were in physical pain. I
Probably a lot of
wonder
them
about
were.
that,
Mm-hmm.
and that the reminder that, of course, all of us are having personal experiences that we are, projecting, sometimes violently and sometimes inappropriately.
Yeah.
So I think there's something about that. So, like, taking care of the body or managing, or being able to even say, I'm in a lot of pain today, so I'm a little bit cranky. There's
Mm-hmm.
something too about self-awareness,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I think it's so important to keep our girlfriends and our
Mm-hmm.
relationships so incredibly strong, because girl, I might need you to call me out. Flesche, what are you doing? You're just a
Yeah.
cranky mess today. What's going
Yeah.
on? What do you
Yeah.
need?
Well, you're probably not
Because
sleeping well when you're feeling in pain too. That's all connected. Yeah.
it's all connected. But for me, this myth that I will just become a cranky old lady um, is is concerning. It's concerning, right? But then I know so many people who absolutely are not, just a ray of sunshine and energy and just living their full lives. And so I just wonder, where is that line? Where is that
Well,
line for
I
us?
I also, just want to say that is there a little good girl concern in there? I'm just hearing good girl
Mm.
creep in a little bit of like, oh God, I don't want to turn into Miss, negativity as I age.
Ah,
Because
ooh,
it's
I
a
like you bringing that
balance,
up.
right? It's a balance. Like, yeah, we might start to ache more. And so, to not mention any of that is also not to be authentic. You can talk about it a little. And obviously, yes, self care and exercise and maintaining yourself is important, but you might want to talk about it for a little while. But maybe you cap it, and you try to balance it with some other things. But yeah, I do wonder if that good girl pressure as we age, it makes it tricky. I think of some elder women who I know, and they'll talk about this or that, and that it sucks, but then a minute later they are telling the funniest story and cracking up and cracking all of us up. So
Mm.
I do think that the cranky has a connection to our good girl pressure. And I think that, like everyone at any age, we want to keep it in check, right? And that we also, though, need to allow in a little bit of them aches and pains that do start to rear up, because that's some realness. So,
For sure. But I think most people listening, and I know this is for me too, I know some people who are so cranky, nobody wants to be around them. Like they
mm-hmm,
basically have nobody around them or hardly anybody around them because they are
mm-hmm.
so unpleasant. So I think you bring up a really good point. Like, is my good girl rearing her head? She's not full, she's still healing herself. And is that part of it too? So I need to look at that for myself for sure. So I really appreciate you being my girlfriend and bringing that up. I will report back. I will process that on my own and report back. Um, but then also this idea of like becoming so unpleasant
Yeah,
that you alienate everybody and everyone's just like,
absolutely.
you're just horrible to be around. Goodbye.
What?
I
Yeah.
think that there's that too.
Yes, I think you are right. Right. Because all of these stereotypes have a little bit of truth in them. There's some that there's like this one in particular has like, sure, can we get a little bit crankier, a little bit shorter? Yeah, but we got to dive in deeper. So yeah, it's a complex topic, cranky
It's
for
yeah, I
sure.
think that one needs that one needs another episode too. Well, this next one's a little bit I wonder if this one's also related to the crankiness, which is the myth that we just get all kinds of out of touch,
Mm,
right? I mean,
right.
especially now, I look at how quickly technology is shifting and changing, and there are things that even my young children are reporting to me, and I'm like, really? That's a thing? How much do we want to stay in touch with all these changes and trends and fads? And I think it can also be tricky to know what's going to have lasting power and what is just a flash in the pan for today.
Also, I know that for my two boys, having these different terms, having these memes and these TikToks and whatever is a way to differentiate. That is their generation, right? That's their growing up and pushing against me. And so I can't keep up, nor do I want to, right?
Right.
Because I could try as hard as I can. I'm never going to be cool. I'm never going to get it right. Even when I say the word, like there was this word going around for a while, cringe. That's cringe. And I'm like, you mean cringy? They're like, no, you say that's cringe, and it replaces awkward. But then the minute I started using it, they stopped using it. So, we're just going to see more and more cycles of these youngins being creative and being hilarious and having their little catchphrases. And that's why I do think it's fun to hang out with people of our same vintage so that we can use some of those old references. And yet, I think that at the end of the day, like just almost like being more of a sort of general human, and like relating human to human is what's going to keep us in touch. And it's like when we're chasing the latest trend, that's gonna make us almost seem older and out of touch. And then, yes, with technology, I am laughing. I really do feel like, oh my gosh, this is what I heard my parents talking about, like when cable TV came out, right? When MTV first happened, and what is it doing to our kids, and what's the destructiveness around it. So every generation has to contend with the idea that we're losing touch with technology. So just like you said, like, okay, what do I need to know to make my iPhone work? But then also, what is almost like not mine to worry about, right?
Right. Right.
But I'm always totally entertained with, like, I can't believe, by the way, how many younger generations come up with like new slang. I'm like, how many different words can we create? Like, there's just some new awesome word all the time.
It's true. It's true. And I mean, it's very fun, and it's obviously very cultural, and like you're saying, a way to identify this is my generation and that's your generation, and where we can relate, where we connect. Um, I am just curious to see how things will progress and change. And obviously you and I have our youngins to help us too, just like my husband and I are the ones helping our parents, and with
Right.
their technology, when they're hitting a glitch and whatnot, our kids will be doing that for us, and the other youngins in our lives
Oh
will
yeah.
help. So nieces and nephews and the kid next door, will be able to provide that as well too. Another reason to keep up those relationships, right? as
Yeah.
we as we get older and as we progress, because we're going to need them.
We're going to need them. And I think what we forget is that all the older people who have been through the multitude of technologies, it's just at some point it's a bit overwhelming. But we have to remind ourselves that, someone in their 80s who's maybe struggling to use their phone adapted over, almost a century of their life to so many technologies. So cut them some slack, people.
It's so true.
All right. Well, we have another one that I find very interesting. This also could be a whole other episode, which is about becoming more inactive, um, less active, less physical, and I do think that America at large has an issue with being more sedentary. I can certainly relate to like sitting in front of screens more. So I feel like, yeah, there's some effort that needs to be made to move around. But this idea that you give up on exercise or you give up on sports, that you can no longer play in the big leagues, it's just shifting. It's something that you want to do physically, but you just want to honor your body. So I, for instance, used to be kind of a gym, cardio nut, and I really loved the high it would give me, either running or elliptical machines, dance classes, really high energy. And then my body started talking to me and was like, whoa, slow down, Jess. This is a lot on your knees and your joints. And I evolved with that, right? Now I take these hill hikes, I do some yoga, I can still get some deep breathing going. I've had to shift how I like to be active. And for me, that helped me. There are other people who can remain marathon runners for long into their older life, and that is like power to them. But I think we just have to keep in tune with how we want to remain active and not hold up this idea of, it's the gym or nothing, right? It's
Right.
what I used to do when I was the 25-year-old, or nothing now. And how do we evolve with remaining active?
Yeah, I think becoming inactive is certainly one of my worst fears.
Mm,
Um, and so one of the things that I do is I just bake it into my social time. So I'm quite social, and I try to get out for a walk with somebody else
mm.
once, twice a week. Sometimes I've done it 3 times a week. And it just it's a way I'm able to see you and visit. I can't wait until you and I are living in the same city
I
again, so I can
know.
get into that forest together.
Yes.
And but that for me takes care of my heart in two ways. So like the physical part and getting it pumping, but then also like the relational part and making that connection, and to be with my beloveds outside, or
In
even walking.
nature.
There's a woman in her 80s, and she's a great grandma, and she's been my ski instructor. She's become a dear friend of mine.
Wow.
And like I look at her and how she lives her life, and I remember when I first met her telling my husband, I want to be her when I grow up. And he was like, okay, then I think you
Yeah.
will. And she's literally teaching me how to be a better skier. She skis
Amazing.
circles around me. Her energy
Amazing.
is just so high. And so like for me, I just admire that and respect it so much. And that she's just so full of that life force and so physically active, and just again, another mentor for me of like, okay, yes, that's how she's doing it. And she's, encouraging me to live into that as well.
Well, that's such a great thing you bring up, which is it's really vital to see it, right? How do we see
Yes.
it? Because I don't
Yes.
think we see it, in our culture all the time. So it's wonderful that you have that relationship. I know I've mentioned in another episode my mom, who is still a hiker, who I hike with weekly, who then does two other hill hikes with her girlfriends, and they're in their mid 70s, almost up to their 80s, and they're still doing it.
Yeah.
So when you see that, it's so inspiring. But I don't think everyone sees it as much.
It's true. It's true. It is something we have to seek out or just
Hmm.
start looking for.
Yes.
Right. So this woman that I'm telling you about, this great grandma,
Yeah.
she's not in my family.
Yeah.
I know her through the school community, and but I just decided I'm gonna be her friend. And I remember the day she said that she would teach me skiing, and I said, well, what do you charge? And she looked at me and she said, Flesche, I don't charge my friends to go out and ski. And I remember
Mm.
getting weak in the knees, like she called me her friend.
Oh.
That's how I knew I was in with her. But so I think that everyone's everywhere. We just have to open our eyes and open our hearts, right?
Yes.
And I think it's incredibly important, and this will be another topic that we tackle, but how do we build the circle of older sisters for us?
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it's incredibly important. I have a very rich one for myself, both in California and in New Mexico.
Hmm.
And I couldn't be as whole and well as I am now without those women in my life.
I think we need to get some of these ladies on our podcast,
Oh, I think we do. We
because we do
definitely
want to be
do.
educated. We want to learn from them, and respect our elders. And I think sometimes when we say that, it seems sort of like this antiquated idea, but no, for the real deal stuff to remain vibrant, to remain feeling alive and having fun. So yeah, I think it's a great point to seek out those people that really inspire you, who are doing things. I think that's why RBG was
Mm,
such a phenomenon, because she's this little, dear little petite thing, but then she's this incredible Supreme Court justice who, if you watched her documentaries, is working out with her personal trainer. There was something so inspiring about that. Why did that become this huge thing? Because we don't see enough of it.
we don't see
So
enough of it.
we don't. So props to all of the elders out there doing that. And yes, we need to welcome them into our circle and let them know, love them up a bit about that, because that's so vital, literally.
It is, well, for us and for them, because the thing I'm learning is that they're hungry to share their wisdom,
Oh,
that they would
yes.
have someone like me just be like, and then what did you do? What did you learn from that? How could I apply that to my situation? And they're like, I got so much time to roll up my sleeves and walk you through it.
Seriously.
And I think that it's an untapped wealth of
Yes.
information and life experience, and wisdom that
Yes.
is just not, that's not connecting, right?
Right.
They need someone to teach, we need someone to learn from. And these women are everywhere, and we can call them out. So I think this one leads into our final myth that we want to kick square in the teeth.
Mm.
Um, and this one we don't have as quite as much control over, and that is cognitive decline. Yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, I think being a lifelong learner really does help that. And there are some studies that show that the cognitive decline in general isn't as great as we worry. Of course, though, there can be certain genetics that, are going to make things variable, but in general, it's not as much as we worry. And they say that remaining active and keeping your brain active, being a lifelong learner is very advantageous. And even if you might have like a mild decline where things are just a little slower, you're going to have experience and wisdom in other ways. So even learning is going to give you advantages that you maybe didn't have when you were younger in some areas, as long as we're not looking at learning as a deficit of how we used to learn and how we used to be able to recall every word. Things shift. Also, just to address in middle age, the fog brain that can come along with menopause and the fuzzy stuff going on. And I mean, some of it I just chalk up to multitasking all the time. But I did experience some of that. And now, having gone through menopause, I do actually feel more clear and less foggy brained. So for me, I can just speak to my own experience. I did experience that for a while. I think it's a temporary issue, and I think it's scary, and I don't think women talk about it a lot, because who wants to lean in and go, I think I'm losing it. Right? It's a scary topic.
It
So yeah,
is.
all of these things that you're bringing up, that the exercise, the diet, the not doing things, it's it's pretty important for your brain as well, and for your longevity. But some of the things that we experience in perimenopause, I think that was even more of a fog brain area than the menopause itself. Um, those can absolutely contribute to feeling a little off for a day.
Right. So I'm in perimenopause, and
Mm.
I knew that this brain fog was a thing that could happen, and I remember being pretty terrified about it. And I would have moments where I absolutely forgot something, or I was supposed to be somewhere, and it so terrified me, and I straightened myself up. I now have like this notebook that I carry with me everywhere. I write every single thing down now. That really helped.
Yeah.
I'll still like trail off when I say something, and with the people in my life, I could just say, I think that's just like one of those foggy moments. But
Yeah.
then I look around and everyone's doing it. It's not like it's just me and I'm just like some nutty professor, forgetting what she wants to say.
Yeah.
um I realize, I mean, even when I was 20, it happened to me. Like my brain would just short out, right?
Right.
And so there is something, it's nice to know that the brain fog goes away after, once we're through menopause. That's like actually very exciting to me.
Hmm.
And I'm guessing it's one of the reasons why people say life is so good on the other side of menopause. It's, just if your mental clarity comes back, and you're, it just seems like a really promising and exciting time, and why I'm like racing to get there. I'm like, that seems amazing. Let's get to menopause. Yes.
Woohoo, menopause.
Which is something I could not imagine having said even 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because
Mm-hmm.
I was still afraid of all these myths,
Yep.
that this was my future that awaited me, and it was bleak, and it was bad.
It's bad. It feels, when you look at it, it looks really bad. So we're so curious with you girlfriends listening. We got into a lot of different topics and, shared our 2 cents about it, but we're just two people. There's so many experiences. We would love for you to consider joining us on Instagram, where you can comment, or joining our newsletter, where you can directly email us and we'll personally get back to you, to know what really feels like the myth that's concerning you, mostly these days. Or are there some, like Flesche said at the beginning, that we forgot about? So what speaks to you? What do you want to, bust a myth about? We would love to hear from you.
I love it. Well, till next time, girlfriend. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in today to Girlfriends of a Certain Age podcast.
Do you have a girlfriend who needs to hear this message? Share this episode with her. She will love you forever.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, rate, and comment wherever you get your podcasts.
Stay tuned for more episodes where we discuss more hot topics about girlfriends living their best lives. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and girlfriendsofacertainage.com.